3 sinister night shift tales revealed. Haunted encounters that terrified workers after dark. The flickering lights of the grocery store cast jagged shadows that danced across the aisles like specters. And Jess felt the familiar gnawing fear tighten around her throat as she clocked in for another night shift. The store was hauntingly quiet, but it wasn't the silence that bothered her. It was the whispers, low and urgent, that seemed to echo off the cold, polished floors. She pushed her cart down the frozen foods aisle, each step echoing with a hollow thud. Was she imagining it? Or was someone watching her? Jess's heart raced. Images of her 2 kids flashed in her mind, sweet little faces waiting for her to come home. Their bellies full, their dreams bright. But tonight, the store felt wrong. Something sinister hovered between the shelves, shifting the colors and placements of stocked items in a way that felt vaguely off. The ice cream containers seemed to throb with a life of their own. She shivered, brushing her fingers against the cartons as if to reassure herself that they were real. And then came the sound, a muffled thump from the back of the store that sent terror coursing through her veins. Was Mark, the new night manager, back there? He had been acting strangely lately, whispering about dark stories tied to the store's past. With every mention, Jess could see shadows flicker in his wide eyes, and she felt a chill that gnawed at her very insides. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Mark shuffled through the aisles, his own pulse thundered in his ears. Each item he scanned felt like a secret splintering under pressure. Faded receipts whispered tales of disappearances woven into the fabric of the town, ghosts fluttering in the corners. Stories forgotten yet alive in the minds of those haunting the shelves with him. He glanced over his shoulder. The sensation of eyes bore down on him, suffocating. Shadows flickered and danced at the edges of his vision, teasing his sanity. Get a grip, he muttered. But the air thrummed with something heavy and dark that refused to release its grip. In the back, Sarah felt it too, an unyielding weight pressing down. It wasn't just a job anymore, it was a battle. Sorting through pallet after pallet, she was visited by the ghostly echo of a woman's wails, her sorrow curdling the air. Leave, she thought she heard her say. She could almost see the woman's face, hidden but palpable, a mix of despair and desperation, ripe with loss. The chilling ambience tightened around Sarah's heart. Minutes turned into hours, and when their paths finally crossed, an electric tension broke through the mundane. Jess looked at Mark, and his paled face mirrored her own horror. They shared bits and pieces of their experiences, comparing notes between trembling voices. Each confession intensified the dread, deepening the sense of a lurking threat that was all too real. And then, as if in response to their fear, the lights began to cut out, one by one, leaving only the harsh buzzing of fluorescent tubes struggling against the dark. In that devouring blackness, a voice broke through, icy and clear. You shouldn't have come back. Panic surged, swimming in their throats as their breaths hitched. The shadows that once quivered now loomed tall, and in that moment, each of them understood the truth. The secrets of their town were rising, and they were caught at the heart of it. The terror was not just watching. It was waiting, hungry in the depths of the dark, and dawn felt like an eternity away. Jess felt a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye, a rustle that didn't belong. Her breath quickened, pulse pounding as she reached for the flashlight clipped to her belt. The beam of light sliced through the darkness, revealing a sliver of the aisle. Shadows danced, shifting around her like fingers ready to drag her into the void. Mark, she called, her voice quaking. Sarah. Panic clawed at the edges of her sanity. She took a shaky step forward. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as if the store itself was alive, breathing darkness. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the store, tumbling down like a funeral of metal. Jess whipped around, the light flickering across aisles of untouched goods. She sprinted toward the noise, the beam shaking with each hurried step. "Please, someone answer me," she shouted, her voice trembling against the silence that followed. Only the distant hum of fluorescent lights answered back, a chilling reminder of what lurked in the corners. Mark stumbled out from behind the dairy case, face pale and eyes wild. "It's not just the store, Jess. It's the town. I shouldn't have come back here." His voice faltered, sweat glistening on his forehead. "What are you talking about?" Jess gasped, heart sinking. "You know those rumors? The story of the woman who disappeared?" He whispered, glancing back toward the darkness. "It's real. She's here. She's been waiting." A chill ran down Jess's spine, colder than the frozen foods surrounding them. "We need to get out of here now," she urged, grabbing Mark's arm. But just as she turned, Sarah darted into view, panic etched on her face. "We can't leave. The door is locked." Sarah's voice cracked, an edge of hysteria breaking through. "And I swear I heard her. She was calling for help." In an instant, the lights flickered violently, casting sharp shadows that seemed to stretch toward them, fingers of darkness reaching from angles unnatural. Jess stumbled back, dragging both Mark and Sarah toward the exit, but the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen weight pressed against it, holding them in suffocating confinement. The air quivered, thick with dread, as a woman's wail pierced through the silence, echoing with sorrow that felt like ice slicing through Jess's heart. "Help me!" The sound twisted around them, bending their sanity with its deep-rooted agony. "We have to face it," Mark shouted, voice hoarse as he turned back toward the shadows. "We can't let her take us like the others." "Face what?" Jess screamed, desperate, choking on fear. "What do you mean?" "The truth." Mark's eyes blazed with an intensity born from despair. He stepped forward, drawing the darkness like an armor around him. "I'll figure it out. You two stay back." Before Jess could protest, the shadows swallowed him whole. The light flickered once more, illuminating a twisted glimpse of Mark's silhouette, then plunging them into an impenetrable dark. In that moment, Jess felt reality splinter. She could taste fear, sharp and metallic, filling the air. "Mark!" Sarah cried, voice breaking. "We can't let him go alone. We need to find him. But which way to go?" The specter of the woman loomed large in their minds, drawing them deeper into the store where the cries echoed like a funeral dirge. It felt as if the very building was realigning, twisting, mocking their fear. And just then, a malicious whisper crawled against their ears. "Join us." Forever they glanced at each other, a decision sparking between them: fear or fate, fight or flight. As the shadows pulsated in the blackness around them, they felt the moment teetering. Whatever emerged from that darkness would either seal their doom or unveil horrifying truths they were never meant to witness. With renewed resolve, they stepped forward into the dark, knowing that the truth was waiting to be uncovered, but also terrified of what it might reveal. And as they ventured deeper into the unknown, a chilling recognition gripped Jess's heart. They weren't just searching for Mark anymore. They were entering the very heart of the terror that plagued their town. But what would they find waiting for them on the other side? The air chilled even further when Jess and Sarah stepped into the murk, a wave of despair pressing on their chests. The flashlight beam trembled, cutting through the black as they moved cautiously. Shelves loomed like sentinels, each holding secrets long forgotten. "Mark," Jess called, her voice barely a whisper, swallowed by the oppressive silence. She glanced at Sarah, who looked as pale as a ghost. Fear glistened in her wide eyes. "Maybe we should split up," Sarah suggested, her voice shaky, almost breaking. "No," Jess snapped, a surge of protectiveness flooding her veins. "We stay together. We don't know what's out there." But Sarah simply nodded, looking like she was about to break apart. Their only guide through the dark was the fragile glow of the flashlight, and as they moved, shadows twisted around them, almost seeming to pulse as if alive. The distant sound of heavy breathing echoed softly behind them. Jess froze, the flashlight beam shaking like her hands. "Did you hear that?" Sarah nodded, her lips a thin line. "We need to hurry." They pressed on, hesitantly making their way past the eerie aisles. It felt like the walls were shifting closer, and the store itself was closing in on them. A cold wind swept through, chilling Jess deeper than the frozen foods nearby. The wails had faded but were replaced with a soft, insistent murmur knotted with mournful tones. Then came the faintest glimmer of movement behind the soulless jars and cans, a slight rustle that sent adrenaline racing through Jess. "Mark," she shouted again, panic clawing at her throat. "Where are you, Jess?" came a hoarse voice dismantled by the darkness. All at once, her heart soared and sank. Was that him? "It's Mark." Sarah grasped Jess's arm, desperate for clarity. The whispering escalated, more chaotic, drowning out Jess's own thoughts. "We can't leave him." They rushed forward, the noise intensifying, surrounding them like a howling storm. Jess felt the heat rise in her chest. "Mark, answer us." Then, out of the swirling darkness, a shape emerged. It was a figure standing in the shadows, motionless and ominous. Jess squinted, heart pounding. "Mark?" The figure stepped closer, a tinge of moonlight highlighting familiar features but not Mark. Jess's breath hitched. This was a woman, her cheeks sunken and eyes hollow-wide and grief-stricken. "Hurry," she pleaded, her voice hauntingly sweet yet painfully chilling. She's coming for you." Jess's heart raced, confusion battling terror. "Who are you?" "They cannot escape her." The woman's head tilted slightly, motioning toward the far aisle. "Join us." The last words twisted like a knife in Jess's chest. The whispers escalated into frantic cries. "Help me! Join us!" They were building, loud and unbearable, drumming against Jess's ears. "Jess!" Sarah shouted, her eyes darting around. "Where's the exit? We have to get out of here." The wailing rose, a chorus of cries echoing off the cold walls until it became maddening. Would they ever find Mark? Or were they doomed to join this ever-growing multitude? Terror clutched at Jess's throat. With the woman's hollow eyes boring into her, she felt time slow. Was she already lost? Was Mark too? Or was he waiting, lurking in the darkness for them to succumb? "Run!" Jess screamed, pushing Sarah forward. The flashlight flickered disobediently as they bolted, racing into the abyss where nightmarish whispers clawed at their sanity. But as they darted deeper into the store, an old dark truth loomed closer, ready to unravel everything they once knew. And in the thick of chaos, Jess realized escaping this haunting night might be the least of their worries. What awaited them at the end of the dark could be far worse than any horror they could imagine. The darkness pressed against Jess and Sarah like a living thing, heavy and suffocating. They stumbled through the aisles, the flashlight beam flickering wildly, illuminating shelves lined with dusty products and twisted memories now lost to time. "Where do we go?" Sarah gasped, her voice cracking. "What if we're trapped in here forever?" "Don't say that," Jess snapped, fighting back the rising panic. "We'll find the exit." But every corner they turned seemed to lead deeper into the maze of despair, each aisle an echo of anxious whispers that clawed at their minds. Jess felt the weight of unseen eyes watching them, lurking in the darkness, feeding off their fear. A loud crash echoed from somewhere at the back of the store, freezing them in their tracks. "Did you hear that?" Jess's heart raced. "It's probably nothing. Just a falling shelf," Sarah stammered, though she too was trembling. "Yeah, nothing," Jess murmured, doubting her own reassurance as another hiss of air whooshed past them. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered out entirely, plunging them into blackness. "No, no, no," Jess fumbled, shaking it desperately, shifting on the spot. A low, sinister laugh bubbled up from somewhere around them, slithering through the dark like smoke. It sent a chill down Jess's spine. "We have to go now," she gasped, taking Sarah's hand. Together, they sprinted blindly down the aisle, the sound of their rapid breaths mingling with the whispers that seemed to fill the air. "Join us. Join us." The flashlight sputtered back to life as they rounded another corner, revealing the source of the unsettling laughter, a display of dolls lined unnaturally on the top shelf, their painted smiles stretched into grotesque grins. Jess's heart raced, but she didn't stop to stare, leading Sarah past the horrid sight. "Are we even moving forward?" Sarah's panic was palpable, heavy like the air around them. There, the exit sign. Jess pointed ahead, relief flooding her. The green glow flickered in the distance, almost mocking them. But as they rushed towards it, the air grew thick once more, almost tangibly blocking their path. The whispers intensified, twisting through the aisles, repeating a name over and over. Jess, Sarah, just keep going. Jess shouted, willing herself to ignore the chaos around them, but dread clawed at her gut. As they neared the exit, Jess's heart sank. Standing before the door was the woman from moments ago, now more tangible than ever. Her features twisted in tortured anguish. You can't leave, she screeched, her voice echoing, reverberating through their bones. You must stay and join us. Jess skidded to a halt, nearly pulling Sarah down with her. What are you? Fate calls to you. The darkness needs you. The woman lunged forward, reaching for them with skeletal fingers, desperation etched in her hollow eyes. Sarah cried out, clutching Jess's arm tighter. Run, Jess, run. In that instant, everything else faded, the chaos, the whispers, and even the memory of Mark. Jess twisted away from the woman, barreling towards the exit, Sarah hot on her heels. But as they rushed past, they both glanced back, and something shifted in the woman's face. Fear faded, replaced by a smile that seemed to stretch impossibly wide. They burst through the door, stumbling into blinding light, gasping for breath, hearts racing. The familiar parking lot stretched out before them, a shocking contrast to the nightmare they had just escaped. But something felt off. No one is here, Jess whispered, scanning the empty space. Where's the car? Sarah's eyes widened in terror. What if it's gone? What if it was all a trap? An icy breeze twisted around them, carrying with it the soft, mocking laughter. And there, behind them, in the darkness of the store, a chorus of voices echoed, growing louder. You can't escape, you can't escape. Jess spun around, dread tightening in her chest. The way they had just come was now a gaping void, shadows swirling like ink in water. Search for the car, she shouted, scrambling back toward the entrance. But with every step they took, the darkness seemed to reach out, pulling them back into its clutches. A new dread settled within her. This was far from over. Whatever was waiting in that store would not let them go so easily. What other horrors lay waiting in the shadows? Jess, stick close. Sarah's voice trembled, barely a whisper, haunted by the shadows. Jess nodded, her throat dry, as they crept toward the edge of the parking lot, every nerve screaming that they weren't alone. The laughter faded, but the air thickened, prickling their skin. What if we never get out? What if they're right? Sarah's eyes darted back to the store, a mixture of disbelief and terror reflecting in her expression. Stop! We can't think like that, Jess snapped, meeting her wide eyes with fierce determination. They needed to focus, to keep moving, but rooted in place, they felt drawn back to the store. With a deep breath, Jess turned again, scanning the lot. Patterns twisted in the asphalt under the dimming light, creating illusions. The car has to be somewhere. Suddenly, a flicker gripped the light post nearby just for a moment, but enough to spark a familiar fear that tingled through them. Did you see that? Jess gasped. Of course I saw that. Sarah choked, magic fear in every word. What if something else is out here? Panic roiled in Jess's stomach as flashes of the woman flooded her mind. That despairing face, how the darkness clung to her until her smile warped into something sinister. No, they had to find the car. They had to without warning. The darkened store behind them groaned, a menacing creak echoing out like a monster waking from slumber. We have to go, Jess shouted, forcing action, racing toward the street, yanking Sarah along. They pushed through the expanse, every heartbeat thundering louder than the crashing panic in their heads. Maybe we'll find someone, maybe we can call for help, Sarah gasped, searching for a car to drive away. Yet the lot was desolate, an empty tomb littered with shadows. The cars all seemed to absorb the light, sculpting sinister shapes that loomed as Jess wove through them. Why can't I see it? Jess muttered under her breath, trying to keep her thoughts steady. But her heart sank deeper with each step. This isn't right, and then she spotted it, a glimmer of hope. A familiar outline nestled under the flickering streetlight. There, the car. Jess pointed, relief flooding her chest. But the sight was accompanied by an unspeakable dread. A figure stood by the car, shrouded in darkness but unmistakably human. The silhouette turned sharply, revealing a gaunt face, eyes wide with an unnatural light. "Stay back," Sarah shouted, but the figure remained still, an echo of that cursed woman from before. "Jess, Sarah." The voice emerged, taunting and sweet. "You cannot leave. You belong to us now." This time, Jess felt the weight of the darkness push down on her, heavy and oppressive. She hesitated, fear curling around her. "No, we want to go back." When she finally broke into a sprint, Sarah followed. They dashed past the figure, hearts racing and lungs burning. But a haunting call echoed behind them, growing louder. Something pulled at their backs, cold fingers grappling like iron chains. "Keep running," Jess urged, but doubt gnawed at her confidence. What if they couldn't escape this time? As they reached the car, Jess flung open the door and dove inside. Sarah scrambled in behind her, slamming the door just as the first hand reached out, clawing at the glass. They both trembled, staring wide-eyed at the haunting figure now inches away, whispering with hunger. "You cannot escape the darkness. We'll have you join us." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks as she fumbled for the keys. "Please, start. Please." The engine sputtered like a dying breath, filling the air with suffocating dread. Then the whispering grew to a cacophony of voices, drowning everything, their names laced with anguish. Just as the figure raised an arm, Jess felt a surge of defiance. "You can't take us." In that moment, the car roared to life, the tires screeching against asphalt, throwing them forward into the night. They sped away, but Jess glanced back, heart in her throat. The figure stood still, fading into the darkness, lips shaped into that grotesque smile. As they sped further, Sarah let out a sob of relief, but Jess couldn't shake the gnawing worry. Where are we even going? What if this isn't over? The whispers followed, lingering like a storm cloud hanging overhead, and Jess tightened her grip on the steering wheel, gasping as the road ahead twisted into uncertain shadows. What would they face as the darkness chased after them? The road wound like a serpent, gravel crunching under the tires, sending echoes into the oppressive darkness. Jess's pulse raced as her eyes darted to the rearview mirror, scanning for any sign of the figure, that terrible smile still haunting her thoughts. "Did we lose it?" Sarah whispered between shaky breaths, staring out into the night as if expecting the shadows to spring alive at any moment. I don't know." Jess forced her grip tighter on the steering wheel, fighting the rising fear bubbling inside her. "But we have to keep going. We can't stop." The density of the night pressed in around them. Trees lined the road like sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out, clawing at the sides of the car. The headlights struggled to pierce the darkness, illuminating only brief glimpses of the road ahead. "Sarah?" Jess glanced at her friend, whose face was pale, stained with tears. "What if it's just waiting? What if it follows us?" A chill snaked through Jess. The very thought sent horror skittering up her spine. She forced herself to breathe, tuning in to the rhythmic thud of the tires against the road. "Just keep your eyes on the road," Sarah muttered, as if chanting a desperate mantra. "We can't let whatever that was catch us." Suddenly, a figure darted across the road, gray and fleeting, vanishing into the underbrush. Jess swerved, heart pounding, as she gasped, "Did you see that?" "What was it?" Sarah whimpered, gripping the door as if it were a lifeline. "I don't know," Jess snapped, adrenaline surging. "But we can't stop." They kept pressing forward, the darkness swallowing the world beyond the windshield, until the engine sputtered ominously. No, not now," Jess shouted, anxiety clawing at her throat. "What's happening?" Panic laced Sarah's voice. "I don't know. Just hold on." The car began to lose speed, coming to a shuddering halt on the narrow road. Jess slapped the wheel in frustration, shouting, "Why is this happening?" The quiet crept back in, as if mocking them. Each second dragged on, heavy with silence. Heartbeats echoed louder than ever. "I have to check under the hood," Jess said, dread pooling in her stomach. "We might be stuck out here, are you crazy?" Sarah protested, eyes wide with fear. "What if it comes back?" Jess took a deep breath, grounding herself. "We can't just wait here. We won tea last." With an unsteady hand, she reached for the door and glanced back at Sarah, who appeared petrified. "Stay inside. Lock the doors." "Please, hurry," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. But Jess couldn't let the terror seep in. The night seemed to stretch, holding its breath, every second a taut string ready to snap. As Jess stepped outside, the air bit her skin. She paused, ears straining in that haunting stillness. The sound of her own heart thudded in her ears. She opened the hood and peered in, but the engine was dark and silent, all hope flickering like a dying bulb. "What's wrong?" Sarah called from inside, voice trembling with fear. "Nothing, I don't see anything obvious." A rustle came from the tree line, sharp and sudden, snapping Jess back to reality. "Stay in the car," she shouted, fear clawing at her throat as she turned. When she saw it, a movement just beyond the trees, shadows bending unnaturally. A figure emerging, not just one, but many, their faces obscured in the dim light, their movements jerky and disjointed. "Jess!" Sarah screamed, fear carrying through the air as the figures began to advance. Jess's stomach dropped. She sprinted back to the car, heart racing. "Start the engine," she yelled, her voice raw. The key fumbled in Sarah's shaking hands. Then another sound cut through the night, the horrible, familiar whispers. "Join us." The figures loomed closer, a distorted mass of shadows. Jess felt the claws of panic grab her. They weren't just chasing them. They were inescapable. "Please," Jess cried, desperate eyes boring into Sarah as the whispers grew louder. "Hurry!" As Sarah turned the key, the engine roared to life, but the figures were almost upon them, mouths twisted in that same grotesque smile. Jess yanked on the door, flinging herself inside just as the first hand slammed against the window. "Drive! Drive!" Jess shrieked, but Sarah was frozen in fear, her eyes wide. The headlights flashed against the throng of figures, revealing their twisted faces, eyes gleaming with a hunger that froze Jess's blood. Then it hit her. They were trapped. With sheer adrenaline, Jess screamed, "Move! Now!" The car lunged forward, tires spinning against the gravel. But Jess felt the darkness clawing at them, hurling its whispers into her mind. "Where?" she gasped, terrified. The road ahead twisted into a dark void, uncertainty swallowing them whole, the whispers intensifying, beckoning them back. Just as they turned a corner, Jess realized with horror there was no escape, and something far worse awaited. What if they had driven straight into the heart of it all? The car flew down the winding path, but Jess barely felt the speed. Her mind raced faster than the vehicle ever could. The figures, they were closing in, and the whispers sank into her bones, chilling and relentless. She glanced at Sarah, who gaped forward, terror etched across her face. "Jess, they're coming," Sarah stammered, her voice wavering. "I know. Just hold on," Jess shouted, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The engine roared, but the car's speed was a mere echo of the dread pounding in her chest. She could barely see the road through the veil of darkness and fear only the flash of the headlights glinting off the glimmering eyes of the monsters behind them. "Where do we go? We can't keep driving into the void," Sarah yelled, panic rising higher in her voice. "Somewhere safe." "I don't know, just trust me," Jess barked, forcing more speed into the gas pedal. The car surged forward, the tires fighting against the gravel with a deafening screech. Behind them, the figures flickered like shadows, their form elongating and twisting, almost as if they were trying to reach through the solid reality separating them. Whispers grew louder, and it felt as if they were not just outside, but inside Jess's head, wrapping around her thoughts. "Join us." Jess's heart slammed against her ribs. It was too familiar, too inviting, and yet it filled her with sheer terror. "No, I want tea," she screamed. She felt the sickness rise in her throat as their voices burrowed deeper, replaying her worst fears, taunting her. "Let me out! Let me out!" Sarah screamed, her hands clawing at the window, as if trying to break the glass and escape. "Stay calm," Jess shot back, fighting against her own panic. "We can't let them take you. Hold on." The headlights illuminated a fork in the road. One path veered sharply left into dense underbrush. The other continued onward, fading into the monstrous dark. "We have to split up," Jess thought, a horrifying realization creeping in. But what if that only put Sarah in more danger? "Left! Take the left!" Sarah yelled, finding her voice through the terror, pointing into the wilderness beyond the fork. "Get us out of here. Curtis hideaway," Jess mumbled under her breath. It was an old abandoned cabin rumored to host more than just creepy memories. But maybe it was their only shot at getting away. She turned the wheel hard, steering the car onto the overgrown path. The tires thudded against the unseen bumps, rattling them as they plunged deeper into the black night, branches scratching against the roof like skeletal fingers seeking to grab them. "Jess, do you think they know where we are?" Sarah's voice quivered, and Jess felt the weight of the question press hard against her chest. The panic felt slow and heavy, but the truth was she couldn't tell. The whispers transformed, rising in urgency, feeding on their fear. Come play, we have to make it to the cabin," Jess shouted, tears mixing with sweat, each breath becoming a battle. As the car jolted over a bump, Sarah screamed, and Jess fought to keep control. "Here, right there." Sarah pointed urgently. Just up ahead, barely visible through the gnarled trees, an old cabin loomed. Its shattered windows were black pits, gazing back at them like hungry eyes. "Get ready to jump," Jess yelled as she veered to a stop. The engine roared, dying, much as their spirits felt. She swung the door open. "Get out." The moment they both slammed the doors shut, Jess felt the air change. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. They turned to the cabin, an overwhelming dread now rising. It seemed to breathe, the wood creaking, welcoming them in. "Jess, what if we shouldn't have come here?" Sarah whispered, trembling. But before Jess could respond, the whispers echoed louder from the dense trees surrounding the cabin, forming a circle. They were in a trap, and the path they chose would plunge them into the depths of something far worse. As the first shadow emerged from the trees, its smile luminous in the moonlight, Jess realized too late there was no safe place left. What did they awaken inside the cabin? The whispers reached a fever pitch, cascading through the air like a wave crashing onto the shore. Jess felt them tugging at the edges of her thoughts, mingling with the encroaching darkness that enveloped the cabin. She scanned the area, searching for an egress, a glimpse of hope, but there was none. A stillness settling around them, dense and oppressive. "Jess, we need to go." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now, a thin line stretched taut between panic and despair. She tugged at Jess's arm, urging her back toward the car they had abandoned. But Jess remained rooted, heart pounding in her chest. "Wait, we can't just run. We have to figure out what's going on." Jess shot back, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The shadows lurking within the trees now shifted, elongating into grotesque shapes, slipping between their direct lines of sight. "Join us." The whisper was clearer this time, sing-songy yet filled with malice. Jess's skin crawled, her blood turned to ice. "They want us," she murmured, dread coiling in her gut. From the cabin, a low creaking sound echoed, as if a door was slowly opening. Jess felt an unbidden urge to move closer, the unnatural draw almost magnetic. She shook her head, dispelling the feeling. "No, we're not doing this." Sarah tugged harder, fear painting her features. "We need to find a way out. Now." But Jess felt herself stepping forward, as though the wood of the cabin was pulling at her, beckoning her closer with a dark promise. Then, from the doorway a figure emerged. It was tall, cloaked in shadow, but Jess could see its grin, a wide, jagged smile that sent chills spiraling down her spine. The eyes within the shade flashed with a sickly green glow, and Jess's breath hitched, part of her wanting to scream, another part entranced. "Welcome," the figure crooned, its voice dripping with honeyed menace. "We've been waiting." "No, Jess." Sarah flung herself in front of Jess, breaking her hypnotic gaze. "Don't listen. It's trying to trick you." The figure paused, seeming to consider. And then it laughed, a sound that echoed through the trees, vibrating with a sinister energy. "Trick? The truth is much worse, dear child. Come inside, and you'll learn." It gestured toward the cabin, every motion a promise of horror and intrigue. At that moment, the air thickened. Jess could smell earth and decay, an aroma that twisted knots of terror in her stomach. "What if we don't?" she dared to ask, her voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, the smile never faltering. "Then the whispers will take you, and you'll join us forever." Steps echoed behind them. Shadows were no longer just phantoms flitting amongst the trees. They filled the clearing, encircling the cabin with a growing throng of ghastly figures. Their whispers rose in a cacophony, drowning out reason. Join us, run!" Jess screamed as terror propelled her into motion. But as she turned, the path they had traveled now twisted. The way back altered into a thicket of twisted roots and brambles. Jess and Sarah were trapped. They glanced at each other, raw fear in their eyes. "What do we do?" Sarah gasped, gripping Jess's arm. As shadows hovered closer, enveloping them in an icy grip, Jess felt the weight of the decision crushing down. The cabin loomed ominously, a maw threatening to swallow them whole. "Maybe we should go inside," Jess whispered, though her soul revolted against the idea. Maybe it's the only way to survive. Why was it that fear threaded with curiosity, dangerously close to their undoing? The figures, now drawing nearer, were face to face with them, smiles stretching impossibly wide. Darkness pooled around their feet, hungry for the light. Could Jess summon the strength to resist? What lay inside the cabin that beckoned so powerfully, and what would it demand in return? The figure in the doorway leaned closer, the grotesque smile widening even further, revealing rows of sharp teeth stained with something dark. Jess felt her stomach churn as the whispers escalated into a chaotic chant, filling her mind with an unbearable number of voices all clamoring to be heard. "Enter, the truth awaits, Jess." "Please," Sarah shrieked, pulling Jess harder. "We can't go in there. We have to fight." But Jess felt the magnetic force of the cabin pulling at her, fighting against Sarah's grip. It was as if the darkness itself seeped into her very being, whispering sweetly of safety, of belonging. "We don't have a choice," Jess shouted, her heart racing. Panic surged through her veins, but a quiet part of her longed to surrender. "Just one step forward, don't you dare." Sarah's nails dug into Jess's arm, grounding her. "We're getting out of here." In that moment of clarity, Jess tore her gaze away from the figure and surveyed her surroundings. The severed paths were closing in, shadows shifting ominously as if alive, yearning to trap them. She turned back to the figure, whose smile was now twisted into a scowl, its patience wearing thin. "Your friend will not save you from the truth. It only lies outside," the figure hissed, its voice like gravel scraping on stone. "Shut up," Jess yelled, propelled by a mix of anger and fear. Her voice cut through the whispers like a knife, and for a split second, the cacophony diminished, not gone, but muted. The figures surrounding them remained silent, eerily still as if waiting for the next command. Jess realized that her defiance had momentarily thrown them off their sinister rhythm. "We need to go around," she urged, desperately scanning the edges of the clearing for an escape route. Sarah nodded, determination shining in her eyes. They began weaving through the dark figures, breath hitching as they squeezed between the shadows that seemed to watch them with hungry intent. The air felt thick like molasses. For every step they took, the whispers intensified, now swirling around them like a tempest of agony. Then it happened. As they neared the thick trees, one particularly shadowy figure lunged forward, its grasp grazing Jess's arm. A cold fire ignited where it touched her, freezing her breath for just a moment. "Join us," it rasped, venomous and inviting. "Run," Jess gasped, setting fire to her limbs, propelling herself forward. The woods loomed ahead like a gateway to salvation. They raced into the trees, limbs scraping against their skin, heartbeats drumming in unison. Howling whispers echoed behind them, almost a sadistic cheer at their escape attempt. "Faster, Jess," Sarah urged, her voice strained but fierce. The darkness seemed to stretch and crawl, seeking to reclaim what slipped through its fingers. They broke through the thicket into the open, spotting the car just a few dozen feet away. But there, blocking their path, stood the figure again. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light. "Did you really think you could escape?" it taunted, a low growl mingling with the rustling leaves. "For the price of knowing the truth, you must give yourself," it said, taking a deliberate step closer, shadows morphing into skeletal hands that reached out, wailing in despair. Jess's heart thudded painfully. Panic surged through her, threatening to swallow her whole again. "What do we do?" she screamed, her voice breaking. "Cling to me," Sarah cried out, pulling Jess fiercely against her. Suddenly, the figure flung its arms wide, and a rush of dark energy burst forth, swallowing the remaining light. It howled, feeding off their terror as the shadows coalesced around them once more. Jess felt the ground shift beneath her. Was this the end? The air crackled with energy, a swirling storm of fate, pulling them in. Would they fight the shadows or succumb to the truth waiting to ensnare them? The night was far from over, and the whispers knew their names. The darkness surged, threatening to consume them whole. Jess felt fear tightening in her chest, a vice squeezing her heart as she and Sarah stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes locked on the sinister figure before them. "What do we do?" Jess gasped, desperation clawing at her throat. "Fight! We can't let it take us," Sarah shouted, eyes fierce but tinged with terror. Just then, the figure lunged, shadows rippling and splitting around it, revealing a multitude of eyes glowing with malignant intent. "You belong to the darkness. You cannot escape the truth of your town." Its voice slithered through the air, filling them with dread. "No, we won T," Jess shouted, spurred on by a fiery resolve. "They wouldn't succumb without a battle." The whispers grew louder, clamoring for them to join, pulling at their will, but Jess could feel the strength of their bond pushing back. "Together, Jess," Sarah urged, squeezing her hand tighter. "We can do this." Summoning all the courage she could muster, Jess yelled, "You are not our truth. We choose to fight." With that proclamation, an unexpected wave washed over them. Warmth flooded their bodies, momentarily banishing the cold dread clinging to their skin. As if responding to their defiance, the shadows writhed. The figure faltered in its advance, confusion blooming across its twisted face. "You dare resist? You cannot hide from her." The very air crackled, charged with energy, and Jess felt hope lifting her spirits. "We can't let fear control us," she shouted, her voice stronger now. "You have no power over us. We break free." Light spilled through the choking darkness, illuminating the hollow eyes of the shadows, revealing their true forms, lost souls and forgotten memories trapped in servitude to the specter. "You freed us," one whispered, voice fragile as glass. Then, without warning, the ground trembled beneath them. The figure howled a sound of frustration and rage as the darkness began to peel away, revealing the warm glow of moonlight spilling over the clearing. "We can help them," Sarah cried, her heart swelling with empathy. Jess nodded, determination anchoring her. "We need to release them." Together, they pulled energy from the light creeping into their reality, feeding it into the swirling mass of shadows. "You are not alone," Jess shouted, feeling the pulse of connection to every soul trapped within the darkness. They weren't just fighting for their lives, but for the souls lost to despair. The shadows writhed and screamed, but slowly, one by one, figures emerged from the throng, illuminated by the newfound light, their hollow eyes brightening with the release of burden. "I can see," one whispered, voice breathy with relief. "Thank you." Fearlessly, Jess and Sarah forged forward, releasing the light with every ounce of their will. It filled the void, turning the whispers into silent screams of anguish as light began to envelop the dark figure. Each soul set free strengthened their resolve, their fear dissipating like mist in the dawn. As the last shreds of darkness unraveled, The unholy figure let out a desolate wail before dissolving into smoke, the malevolent energy dissipating like fog under the sun. Jess and Sarah took a staggering breath, the air feeling fresh and clean. "It's over," Sarah breathed, but Jess felt the weight of the moment. They had faced the darkness and they had won. Yet, deep inside, a lingering doubt remained. But what will happen if we come back? Jess pondered out loud, her heart tightening at the thought of returning to a town shadowed by secrets. "Let us not think about that now," Sarah replied gently. "We're free and that's what matters. We can warn others. We'll share our story." Jess nodded, feeling reborn in that newfound light. Together, they turned to leave, not just for themselves, but for every soul lost, for all that had passed in the name of darkness. As they made their way to the car, hand in hand, whispers followed them softly, not with malice but with a gentle promise of remembrance, a reminder of pain transcended, hope found in the darkest places, and the enduring strength in unity. And as dawn broke over the horizon, the light washed over them like a cleansing tide. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. They had stared into the abyss and stepped forward, no longer just survivors, but torchbearers of truth. Now they had a story to tell. If you liked this story, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss any exclusive stories like this one. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this adventure with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together we grow.